Welcome to the Financial Freedom Podcast, where we interview remarkable people and share strategies for mastering money and living a meaningful life. With your host, Grant Sabatier, creator of Millennial Money and author of Financial Freedom, a proven path to all the money you will ever need.
Welcome to the Financial Freedom Podcast. I'm really excited today to have a good friend of mine and a guy that I've looked up to for a long time, the New York Times best-selling author of The $100 Startup, the author of Side Hustle and the Pursuit of Happiness, and the author of a great new book, The Money Tree, which we're going to talk about in depth in a little bit. Everybody welcome Chris Guillebeau.
Dude, thank you so much for having me. I'm a big fan of you as well.
So here we are amidst all this craziness and uncertainty. For everyone who's listening, we're recording this on April 22nd, 2020, amidst the coronavirus pandemic. And Chris, you're literally a guy who has traveled to every country in the world. And I know you were getting ready to embark on a 40-city book tour for the Money Tree, but you're stuck at home. How you doing, man?
Yeah, stuck on lockdown. Well, I guess first and foremost, I should say I'm doing okay compared to so many people. A lot of my life is the same. I work for myself, and I don't have to worry about getting laid off. I don't have to worry about being infected. I mean, I guess I'm worried about that, but I mean, like, my life is pretty good compared to a lot of people. So let's just say that. But as for the, like, I was supposed to be in 40 cities, and so that's a little bit disruptive. I had every plane ticket booked and every venue and, all these plans to go out like I've done for all my other books. And I've really enjoyed that in the past. And so at first I was kind of bummed. But then I decided, well, I have to reframe just like everybody else. Everybody else has to adjust to circumstances often more difficult than mine. So I just learned to kind of say, well, what can I do, during this time? How can I see this as an opportunity, like I'm trying to talk to people about? So yeah, I'm good. It's a strange time for everybody, but I think the thing to remember is that we're all in this together, and like everybody's experiencing it simultaneously, which is, interesting since that's never happened before like this.
Now, Chris, you've spent your career writing about entrepreneurship, making money, living life on your own terms. And you had a tweet the other day that caught my attention where you said a lot of people think that entrepreneurship is risky, but what's actually riskier is working for someone else and having to rely on someone else for your paycheck. So for the person who's listening to this, who maybe they have a side hustle, they're starting about thinking a side hustle, or want to work for themselves, or always thought that entrepreneurship was too risky, how can they get more control over their life?
Well, if you want more control of your life, you have to take more control of your life, because nobody's going to come along and give it to you, right? And this doesn't mean that there aren't good jobs out there. It just means that, ultimately you're going to care about your well-being and your security, all that stuff more than anybody else. And so I think the other interesting thing about this time is that a lot of people are realizing, wow, a lot of stuff that I believed to be true before is not true. A lot of the assumptions that I held, are not accurate, or maybe they were for a while, they're not now, whatever it is. And so a lot of people are realizing, I need to do something for myself. I need to find a way to create financial freedom, just like you talk about, all the time and such. So I guess for me, the thing about risk, it's funny because people think, working for yourself, or, even starting like an entrepreneurial project is risky. But I think for a lot of us, like, the risky thing would be to trust your well-being, your safety, and all that kind of stuff to some external force, to trust it to the job market, or to corporate America, or to whatever it is. So for me, ironically, I feel like this is the safe choice. Like, working for myself is the safe conservative choice. Like, I think if I were to go and try to compete in the job market, first of all, what would I do? I've never, had a job, always worked for myself. And second, that would just be, phenomenally risky, essentially. So I guess I want to encourage people. It's not so much, hey, go out and take the risk, go take a big risk. It's more like, think about what really is risky in your life, and think, how can you make investments in yourself so that you are better protected, the next time an unexpected event comes about, whether it's a global pandemic that shuts down the entire world, or it's just something in your area or your industry, or something is changing. Whenever there's disruption, how can you be protected against that?
One of the advantages for me of being an entrepreneur is that I've gotten to learn a lot about myself. And even though entrepreneurship has been difficult in a lot of ways, and I've struggled with anxiety for many years in my life. I feel like it's also taught me a lot about myself and my own limits, and I've spent a lot of time worrying about whether or not I was going to be able to control my own life and where it was going. There's just an immense amount of uncertainty, even when you try to control everything in your business, similar in some ways to a pandemic, because there's so little that you can be sure of. There's so little that we can actually control. Do you feel like entrepreneurship, and you've been an entrepreneur for now a long time, has helped you through that uncertainty? And, I really view entrepreneurship, even if you're just testing a side hustle, you learn a lot about yourself and what's possible and what's not possible. And it's just a really incredible journey that is tougher to get, I feel like, in traditional full time employment working for someone else.
Sure. Yeah. Well, first, thanks for sharing about anxiety. And I think more people need to talk about that. I mean, I struggle with anxiety and depression, off and on for much of my adult life. And I'm doing okay right now, but, anybody else in that situation needs to hear that. And I think there are different kinds of anxiety, right? And I think you pointed to a really good point about how, like, when you didn't have money, like when you were feeling pressured, when you're in debt and all that kind of stuff, that is an objective weight. That is a burden that is on you. And every now and then somebody will ask me, like, Chris, why are you always talking about money? Money is just a tool, right? Like, it's a resource. I'm like, yeah, I know money is a tool. It's a resource. It's not the ultimate life purpose, et cetera. But the thing is, most of the people who say that money doesn't matter, they already have money. Like, I've never heard a poor person say money doesn't matter. I've never gotten an email from somebody who has lost their job, and said, hey, please stop talking about money. So I think we need to be be cognizant of that. And once you are able to, have a good standard of living, and not just your basic necessities, but you are able to save a little bit, invest in yourself, and maybe do something fun once in a while, then it allows you, it kind of frees you up a bit to have more creative space, to do something that's important to you, or to pursue a big dream, or just whatever it is. Like, when you remove that burden, you have a lot more space. And so I think that's so vital. I think that's so vital. And people don't always understand that it's possible. They often feel like, oh, I can't do that. I hear Grant's story, it's amazing, but I couldn't do that myself. But I think even just earning like a small amount of money at first, like the first time you earn money apart from your paycheck, it just feels so good. It feels empowering. And so that's probably what I'm trying to help people do with the money tree and my other stuff, is like, there is something you can do. Here's the steps you can take to do it. Here's some relatable people, like, who are also doing this. You're not alone out there. We're all trying to figure this out together. And there is a better, like, if you're struggling now, there is a better place in the future.
One of the things I love most about your work, Chris, is this level of hope that you have in all of your books. There's equal parts storytelling, inspiration, and then practical steps that someone can take, whether they're starting a side hustle, looking to travel, or looking for the fortune in their backyard, like in the money tree. And I really appreciate that inspiration because it helped me greatly in writing Financial Freedom. So, there's a big difference between making money doing something that you love and just, making money doing something that you don't enjoy. And listeners know that I made a number of sacrifices. A lot of the money that I made in my life was doing things that I just wasn't particularly passionate about. It wasn't my deep purpose. And you've had the opportunity now to create for a living for a number of years. What would you say to the person listening to this who has something deep down that they want to do, a passion project, something they want to pursue, something they want to create, but they feel really far from being able to start that project, let alone make money from doing something that they love? The idea of making money doing something that you love was quite foreign to me, and I think it's quite foreign to a lot of people. What advice would you give them?
Yeah, well, I think, if I said I just write whatever I want, I mean, that's true. But I think, like, there's a lot of things I could write, just like you or anybody listening. And I guess I try to find some overlap between something I'm interested in and something I do think is going to be, interesting and viable. So I think over time, like the more you pursue this stuff, like in your career, when you say most of the money you've made has been doing things you don't like, I think in the long term that's not going to be the case. If we go ahead a year, 2 years, 3 years from now and stuff, you'll be able to say, actually, I'm doing more of what I love to do, and it's partly you love to do it, but you're also good at it. I think that's the thing. You love to do it, and you're good at it. It influences people. It makes a difference. It has an impact, and so I think to me, speaking of motivations, like impact is a very powerful motivation, like more than money or more than anything else. It's like the emails that you receive, I know, from readers who've read your book, or I get some too, talking about like, oh, I read your book and then I went and did something with my life and was able to like start saving or get out of debt or, whatever it is. That's powerful. So I think my message for people isn't so much like just suck it up, right? And it's also not just go out and do whatever you want. Like, I think the message is you're on this quest of trying to figure out what is the intersection between, the things that I like to do and what makes me come alive, and what I feel I'm particularly good at, because like there's a long list of stuff that I'm not good at, and so I want to focus on the few things I am good at that also, seem to have some kind of intersection or impact with other people. And so I think you just the way you find that is through trial and error. You find that through trying a bunch of stuff and you see what works and what doesn't. And if I look back on like 11 years of doing the books and sharing and stuff online, where I've had the most success, it's always been when I am doing something that is a little bit different, or I am kind of pushing against what other people have done, or I'm just trying to like find my own way in it. Whereas, when I have been less successful, it's like, oh, Grant's doing this, he's doing this thing on social media, so I should do it. Oh, this is what so and so is doing. Oh, they did their product launch this way. If I just follow these same steps, and not only was I less successful doing that, I was also, less happy, essentially. So I'm happier when I'm pursuing something that I care about, that's making an impact. And I think everybody can find that. It's a matter of just, it's a journey. We're all on this journey. We're still on it.
So you bring up a good point about finding that intersection between what you want to do and what the market wants or what they'll be interested in. How do you evaluate risk?
Yeah, I think maybe, so if I think about this new book as a way to make an analogy, because this new book, The Money Tree, it's fiction, right? It's my first novel, 6 other how-to books, and this is a story. So I'm still trying to teach through the story. I get still persuasive in a way. I'm trying to help people, believe in themselves more, and here is a path you can follow to create your entrepreneurial project if you're feeling, financial pressure. But ultimately, it's a story. So speaking of risk, it is kind of a risk in the publishing world. Like when I first took it around, everybody's like, "What is this?" It's like it's a novel, but it's how to. It's how to, but it's not really all. It's not like steps. There's no like, here, do this, do this, do this. I don't have like the 3 points at the end of the chapter that was like, did you, just in case you missed it, here's what I said in this chapter. I don't have any of that stuff. So it is a bit of a creative risk in that way, but I really believe in it. And I think I believe in it so much that here's what I'm coming to. I believe in it so much that I knew if I didn't pursue it, if I didn't write the book and put it out and do everything I could to get the word out, then I would regret it. And so I think that is the question, like that's what you have to ask yourself once you start thinking about any big idea, any creative risk, any business idea, whatever it is, and if I don't do this, how will I feel? And if the answer is, okay, it's fine, I did something else, then that's one thing. But if the answer is, man, if I don't try to do this, I'm really going to, regret that, then that's your answer. That's more than any quantitative, analysis, more than any Google search. If you don't follow that, then you're going to be, pretty unhappy with yourself.
You make a really good point, and congratulations on the New York Times feature. I know this is the first time they've featured you now with your 7th book.
First, I saw the New York Times was reviewing the book, and I was like, oh, what are they going to say? Because they historically say really bad things about books. They really kind of trashed some authors, but then they actually said good things. But then also the other point was that, 6 other books have never reviewed it before. So
I want to stop here and encourage everyone to check out a copy of Chris's new book, The Money Tree. And you might be thinking, I've already read Financial Freedom, or I've read a bunch of money books. Why do I need to read another one? And this book is really different. It's a fiction book. It really took me back to when I started my own financial journey, and it helps me think about money in new creative ways. It's an engaging story, and I couldn't recommend it more. So definitely check out moneytreebook.com to learn more about the book. And what kind of bonuses are you offering, Chris?
So I'm doing a daily YouTube channel where I'm just kind of talking with people. It's a little bit of a lesson, but mostly I'm just showing up and doing live chats. So that's every weekday at 9 a.m. Pacific. That's just under my name, youtube.com/Chris Guillebeau. Doing some other, live streams on Instagram, doing some Zoom meetings like all over the world. So if there's groups out there, love to come and talk about these concepts. Happy to do it free. I want to get the message out. I want people to hear about this. So anything I can do to be helpful, that's what I'm trying to, that's a decision I made. Like, okay, I was going to be on the road for 6 weeks. Now I'm not. So is this just like 6 weeks of vacation? Well, of course not. I'm always going to work on stuff, but I decided I'm going to use the same amount of time that I would be like schlepping around city to city and like doing the events every night and stuff. I'll spend that time showing up, virtually, digitally for whoever I can, however I can. So it's been a good process. It's been interesting.
So chatting with the author, literally the author of the book Side Hustle, I have to ask you a couple side hustle questions. What are the biggest barriers or biggest roadblocks that you see people putting up when it comes to starting their side hustle? What do they worry about? What's holding them back?
Yeah, probably pretty similar to what you see. I imagine there's some commonalities. I think a lot of people, don't know what they would do. They don't know what their idea would be. They hear these stories about other people and they're like, oh, it's cool that, he could do that or she could do that, but I don't know what I would do. I think that problem is pretty easy to solve. Like there are a lot of ideas out there and it's not that hard to learn to develop your curiosity and your sense of observation, paying attention to problems and such, which is where a lot of, good side hustle ideas come from. I think the much bigger challenge is just like, I don't know how to get started, or there's some block in me. Like I know what I need to do, but I'm not doing it. I mean, I would say I probably hear much more about these internal challenges or like imposter syndrome or whatever than I do about external challenges. I mean, the external one people think of as capital. I don't have money, et cetera. But everything I've ever done, if they know anything at all about my work with side hustle or anything else, like the $100 startup, it's all about starting without spending money. So I'm trying to demolish that objection up front. But I think the bigger one is, what if I fail? What if it doesn't work out? What if it does work out? What does that mean? So it's just the sense of the unknown, the sense of change. And what I've started to say about this imposter syndrome thing is, if you have this crazy idea and you don't do anything about it, if you think about that question of regret, if you know you're going to regret it and you don't do it, then that's the imposter. Like the imposter in you is the one that doesn't move forward. Right? The authentic you, the true you, the real you is the one that's like, yeah, I'm going to try. I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm going to try. I'm going to try. Like, I'm going to start writing this blog like you did. I'm going to start my quest to go to every country in the world. Like that came about because I was thinking about regret. And I was like, the authentic part of me says yes to this no matter what happens with it. So that's what I think. Like, just realize, like, if you're listening to this, first of all, you're in a good place because you're listening to this, you're already like self-identifying as like, I want to improve myself. You could be watching Netflix or whatever right now, but you're choosing to like, no, I want to do something for myself. So that's great. So now what you need to do is take the next step. The next step, you need to actually move forward with your idea or figure out what your idea is, and then give yourself a deadline, give yourself a timeline within the next, 3 weeks or 4 weeks or whatever it is. I'm going to have some basic version of this out there.
Yeah, I'm really glad you said that about failure because, failure, it's something certainly you learn from, but sometimes it just takes time to figure out what you love and figure out what makes you happy. I think one of the worst questions, and I've said this before, that you can ask someone is, what's your purpose in life or what's your passion or what makes you happy? Because a lot of people don't know and that just makes them feel bad. I remember being asked that question all the time in my 20s and, readers and listeners know that I didn't find my purpose and passion in life until it showed up, after launching millennialmoney.com and writing about personal finance and my story and then connecting with readers. I mean, that became my purpose in life. So it took some time. It took some trial and error to, figure out what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. And, being open to things and unexpected ways has also helped me immensely. My wife and I are into Project One Runway and used to watch it back in the day. And there's this new series on Amazon called Making the Cut with Heidi Klum and Tim Gunn, where they're designing clothes. And, I just thought, hey, I want to try drawing some clothes. And so I ordered a sketchbook and started drawing some different fashion clothes and ideas and just sort of tinkering and trying to do something that was completely creative, just like I used to like coloring back in the day. Ordered some colored pencils, and man, I've really fallen in love with it. It's a lot of fun, and I don't know, of course, what's going to become of it or if nothing becomes of it. But I was kind of surprised by joy, to use the C.S. Lewis quote. It surprised me. It's something never in a million years could I have imagined that I would enjoy, fashion designing and drawing these clothes and designing these collections. And I'm just having fun with it, man. It's a super fun hobby. So, and even when it came to writing the book, I always wanted to write a book, and I tried for many years, and it was so hard, but it was a lot easier once I had something to say. Dude, you've written 7 books. Writing Financial Freedom was one of the hardest things I've ever done in my life. I spent over 2,800 hours writing the book, and really it took everything out of me. And now, as I'm planning to write the next one, I can't even imagine what it's like to write 7 books, man. What keeps you going?
You said it was a lot easier to write the book once you knew you had what you were going to say, or what you wanted to say. So I think that's a big thing. Like, probably out of 7 books, maybe 1 or 2 at the outset, I didn't know what I really wanted to say, and it took a long time to figure it out. Those were the hardest books, to write for sure. With Side Hustle, for example, I knew exactly what I wanted to say for that. It was just a matter of like, okay, how do I actually say it? But I know what I want to do. So I guess for me, I always just loved books. I don't see books as like a marketing tool. It's not like a book is my stepstone to buy my online course, or it's like the base level of my funnel. I don't have a funnel, I don't do any of that stuff. I love books, and I feel fortunate that I am able to write them. Some people out there actually care about them. So I feel like I got the greatest job in the world. I feel like I honestly every day feel very grateful that I can do what I do. And that in itself is motivating. I think the best productivity hack is to love what you do. A lot of people spend a lot of time trying to be very efficient and they're very efficient at doing the wrong things. They've got everything like super dialed in, and like all these hacks and tips and systems and such. And you use that word joy before. I don't think most of those people would ever use the word joy. Like, joy, what is that? Oh, okay, joy. That's like a euphoric happiness. It's like a sense of like, oh my gosh, I really love what I'm doing today. Like, I don't think they have that, or most. So I have tried, for better or worse, to just focus on what I am good at, that I like to do, and as I said, feel fortunate that I'm able to keep doing it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more that there's an immense amount of peace that comes from being in alignment with the things that you love and being able to do the things that you love. So, something you brought up, Chris, that I wanted to hone in on, you mentioned that you don't have a funnel. And for everyone who's in the online marketing, digital marketing space, it's what we hear all the time: build a funnel. And the simple idea of give your book away for free, or do the free webinar and then have someone sign up for your membership area, or your very expensive mastermind products, but you don't have a funnel. Chris, aren't you leaving money on the table? I mean, I don't have one at all. I kind of feel like they're sleazy sometimes, but I'd love your thoughts on that.
I mean, I'm probably leaving money on the table by being an author in the first place. Like writing books is not the pathway to wealth, compared to like creating more online products and such. And I have no objection to online products. I mean, in Side Hustle School, like, I'm featuring people with online courses all the time. It's just a question of like, what is it that I'm supposed to be doing? Like, what am I good at? What makes me come alive? All those things I mentioned before. And for whatever reason, I've just connected with this medium more than others. So yeah, I think every time that I've tried to do stuff like that, I also have felt kind of like, this is okay. It's not like it's terrible or anything, but it's like, this is really not it. I don't feel the joy. I don't feel like I'm putting out the highest quality work. And so those are 2 good reasons to not do something. So if I can figure out at some point, maybe I will like have more products or courses and such. But I also don't want to have a lot of employees. I have a very, very small team by design. I don't want to be a manager. So I think most of the people that tend to do that well, they have really focused on like growing the organization of themselves, which is respectable. Like, I think it's pretty cool that they've done that. But I know that I'm not good at that. So I don't want to go down the road that I'm not going to see off very well.
One of the things that you're saying that resonates with me is that you have to know your limits. And this is one of those things where, I had Tony Robbins on the podcast, and I love Tony, but he's always like, if you can be more and create more and make more, then that's what you should do. But, Vicki Robin taught me the simple idea that freedom really only exists within limits. And, I know no matter how hard I try, I'm not going to be able to run a 4 minute mile. And I think it's really important to recognize your own limits and what sandbox you're playing in so that you can set your own measure stick for success, for your life. And also, on the flip side, I'm going to draw a connection here to this great Kobe Bryant documentary that I watched. And, it came out 4 or 5 years ago, of course, before he died. And, when he was 18, he realized not only did he love basketball, but that was the thing that he was good at. And in order to be the best and fully explore that passion, he was going to have to make some trade offs. And he wasn't going to be able to spend as much time with friends and learning other things. He was going to have to play basketball. He found his passion. He realized his limit, that he couldn't do other things. And I think a lot of life, if you can find that sandbox and your sandbox and push your own boundaries but also realize your own limits, it's an incredibly freeing thing. It also reminds me of a great book that Stephen King wrote, the horror writer on writing, and it's called On Writing. And it's an incredible book, and the audiobook, he actually reads it himself. And he said at one point, when he realized that he wasn't going to be the next Faulkner and that he really liked writing horror stories, that he just wanted to write horror stories, and he got good at it, and he stayed in his lane. And that is what's made him successful and helped him enjoy his life. He realized his own passion, but also his own limits. This is something I've struggled with in my own life over time. You can always make choices to go out and do something to make more money, but really, I've whittled it down, and now I like to do the things that make me feel most alive. But it's a hard lesson to learn. How did you learn it?
I'm still learning it, man. Like I think we put too much pressure on people to understand like what their life purpose is, at the age of 21 or whatever it is, or even age 40 or 50. I mean, like, people find out through experiments and through doing different stuff. And, when I was 20, I started selling things on eBay, and I was really attracted to the freedom of that. And I think about that a lot because, this whole thing about like following your passion, I wasn't passionate about anything I was selling on eBay. You know what I mean? But I was attracted to the freedom of it, and like the notion of like, wow, if I learn how to do this, I can set my own schedule. I can work when I want. And not just that, but like if I get better at it, if I learn about copywriting and marketing and photography, then probably make more money. And like, I was just very attracted to the whole process of that. And that then led to me learning about some other business skills. Then I spent 4 years in West Africa as an aid worker, and it's like, there's not a direct connection. Like being an aid worker for 4 years in Africa, what's that got to do with like, the money tree that I'm writing now? But the middle portion of the money tree takes place in Ethiopia. And like, Africa actually features in it quite a bit. And I think, well, this experience informed that, and all the travel that I did, all the random projects, which there's a lot of random projects, some successful and more not. But I don't really regret any of them actually, because like they all kind of informed or taught me, so I think that's the lesson for people is like, just start doing stuff and don't worry about whether it's the be all end all. Maybe that's another concern that people have, or a reason why they don't move forward with their idea, because they think they have to have the big idea. They think they have to have like the Steve Jobs, Elon Musk idea. And you don't have to have that. Like most people are not going to have that. Most people are going to have something that's useful and practical and helpful, that's therefore valuable to other people. And if you have that idea and you can, implement it, then you're almost doing a disservice to people if you don't. So my encouragement is like, if you're doing something for a while and you don't like doing it, then just stop doing it. Like, you don't have to tell yourself like, I have to commit to this. You're not Kobe Bryant. Unless you know if you know exactly what you want to do, then that's great. Do that. Stay in that lane. But for like the 99% of us, that we like to do different stuff. We are hard workers. We're listening to this podcast, so we're therefore investing in ourselves. But we don't have the basketball, the one thing. You just do stuff, and then if you don't like that, then do something different, and eventually you're going to get to where you want to be. But you won't be able to get there, without going down that meandering path, I think.
I found that not knowing has become one of the most powerful forces in my life, and getting comfortable with not knowing and just being able to sit in that space, arguably easier to want to sit in that space and create that space than needing to sit in that space like in the pandemic. And I'd actually love your thoughts on this, Chris, because we're both in the personal development space, and last year the number one selling books were productivity journals, and especially us as an American culture, we spend so much time planning out every moment of our day, and before this pandemic, planning out every moment of our day and habit stacking and doing the 5 minute meditation and the cold shower and the green juice, and this idea that we can always get better and should always be getting better. But Alan Watts, the British philosopher, he honed in on this, that it's often those moments that surprise us that make us feel most alive. And here we are trying to schedule every moment of our day and stay busy and always try to get better, when in reality, creating space for not knowing, giving yourself permission to do nothing, ultimately is where not only new ideas come from, but also a sense of peace. And that's something that's taken me in my own life quite a while to learn, and would just love your thoughts on that.
Well, I think people have pretty much only two options in this situation, and one of those options is not good. The one option is to like resist somehow and to fight this, and you can't resist this. You cannot fight this. There's nothing you can do. Right? This is completely, this situation we're in, the pandemic specifically. This is completely out of every person's control. Obviously, we should be safe. We should try to not make sure other people get infected. But that's kind of passive. Okay, so you're washing your hands, you're staying away from people, great. Assuming you're not like a nurse or a doctor on the front lines, one of those people who's actually saving the world. All the rest of us. So our options are to like wait it out, or otherwise fight it or resist it, or just as you're saying, to embrace it and to say, okay, man, why is this here? Not just like, why is it in the world? Why is this in my life? Why now? What does this mean for me? What does it signify? I hear a lot of stories from people who have, lost their job. And at first they say, oh, this is really scary. But then they end up going down the path of doing what they really wanted to. And they say, well, I never would have actually gone down that path if I hadn't have lost the job. And so what I've started to say to people sometimes, and this is kind of careful, you have to be careful with the tone and stuff, but usually you can tell in the situation if it works. When somebody says they lost their job, sometimes I say, well, congratulations. And they're like, nobody says that. Nobody ever says congratulations. Everyone's always like, oh, I'm so sorry. Are you okay? You're going to be all right. And, to say congratulations, you're like, wow, this is actually an opportunity. Like I have lost something that I thought was stable, which has now shown me that it wasn't stable, and has now kind of gently pushed me, out the door to do something different. And now all of a sudden I have the chance to do that thing that I always wanted to, but was afraid to do, because I realized that the security I thought I had, I don't actually have it. So therefore I have to go out and create my own.
Hey, Chris, it's been a real pleasure having you on the show. Dude, this is one of the best things about doing this show and doing this work, is that I get to chat with and connect with people that I've looked up to. I could never have imagined, after reading The Art of Nonconformity, that I'd have the chance to hang out and get to know you. And dude, thanks for all you do. Everyone check out moneytreebook.com. The Money Tree by Chris Guillebeau. It's the latest and the greatest. And then don't stop there. I've read 4 out of Chris's 7 books and couldn't recommend them more. Check out The Art of Nonconformity, The $100 Startup, and Side Hustle. It's moneytreebook.com. Dude, Chris, thanks for being on the show.
Awesome. Same to you. Thank you so much, Grant.